Yay, we're live. Greetings and welcome everybody to the Modern Alchemist Channel. I'm Aubrey Forrest, the Modern Alchemist. The audio's on. Everything is okie dokie. We're all here. So, Aggie's here. I'm here. You're here. All right, welcome. So, tonight on Ask An Alchemist, we are going to answer a couple questions which I received over the last couple weeks. And the first one actually relates to, hey, Aggie, what are you doing? Oh, okay, fine. So, everybody, before we begin, this is Aggie. She is my blue-fronted Amazon parrot. And yeah, I started a little bit early anyway, but she's my blue-fronted Amazon parrot. She's actually a rescue bird. And I've had her for, gosh, about 20 years now. And she's going to be with me forever. Like as long as I live, she'll be there because they're a very long-lived bird. Anyway, so Aggie definitely likes the attention, and so she lives for this kind of stuff. Oh. Hey, Cameron. Hi, Andy. Welcome. So, yep, just cuddling up with Aggie here, getting us all started. I'm all set for the question. By the way, Cameron. I hope I'm going to focus it in the direction that you're looking for. Last week, I believe it was last week, right? You'll nod or tell me, "Hey, Horace." You'll let me know if, in fact, I'm going in the wrong direction, that I can course correct. Okay. But last week we were talking briefly, I believe, about free will. And I've given a lot of thought, actually. People have talked about free will in ad nauseum, right? And so what I'm going to talk about is free will as it relates to what we do as alchemists, as magicians, sorcerers, whatever you want to call yourself. Free will is incorporated in that because the focus of your will is the focus of your intent. So the more you're able to channel your will, the greater your focus, the greater the outcome, right, of your intent. And I'm going to tell you right now, I agree. I absolutely agree. For me, if I were to quantify magic into an equation, say, then what I would do, the equation would be as follows. It would be active mind and will over passive mind equals the outcome. So what does that mean? Well, passive mind, we should define what mind is. The all is mind, right? The universe is mental. So when we're talking about alchemy or magic within the framework and paradigm of the mental universe in which we reside as living souls, right? Subject to the principles of vibration and polarization and rhythm, we, right, are here, and the all is mind, and we are part of that. Then mind, which is simply there, which exists, which is part of the structure and framework of, for lack of a better word, our holodeck, right? That's passive mind. And that can fulfill any number of things, bugs, animals, plants, other people, maybe, right? Vehicles, rocks, mountains. This could all be seen as passive mind, meaning that it's there, and that over time, passive mind can be reinforced when more people encounter it. And you can call this kind of a consensus or agreed upon tendencies, meaning that we look at that and I should stop looking and reading at the same time. I lose my train of thought, but I love the active internal. So passive mind can also be yourself. For instance, if you wish to gain the impression of the universe, then you stop pinging and you become receptive. So you become passive. That's how you absorb things. It's how it's the initial part of my own creative process. is to first adopt that which is internal. All things relative to what we are and what we're discussing begin first within the self. It's always internal. And because our internal perspective will determine our perception of the external world. It's why you can have a group of people, and depending on their emotional states, they will perceive the same event differently. So their internal world is the lens through which the external world is then experienced by them, and through which they then communicate their impressions of the external world. You know, this is what I saw. This is how I feel. So passive mind then is everything out there that is just there. It's always there. It is consistent with the idea of Kabbalah, right? Because as the chalice portion of the tree, everything that descends with color. And I'm speaking of the tree as diagrammed within the realm of Braya, within the world of Braya. So the three primary colors and the two secondary colors, and Malkut is that quadrant section of tertiary colors. Anyway, everything beneath the active masculine portion of the tree, which is the archetypal realm, which is monochromatic, is then receptive. So the first act of all things within that domain is to receive. Hence, it's in Braya, the first realm to receive as a creative process, then, right, is Braya through Chesed. So when we are looking upon the universe, we can oscillate between active and passive mind. Active mind is when we are engaging with the universe. We are seeking to penetrate. Active mind involves using the sacred masculine principles of projection and attraction. So what we seek eventually becomes what we shall find. What that aphorism means is that if you're looking for trouble, you're going to find it. If you see the world as a wonderful place, you're going to find the world to be a wonderful place. And again, that is being generated from an internal locus of control, an internal central point of focus from which we all then project outward. So as you use the active mind in your efforts to perceive the universe, as you are actively manipulating the universe around you in association with what you perceive, that is that active mind portion, but it does not necessarily involve will. It just means that you're now activating the other side of yourself. We are of two minds, the active masculine and the passive feminine, the attractive and the resistant. And as we work back and forth between these two states of consciousness, we find ourselves gifted with, in fact, four states of consciousness, right? So because it kind of works out into a little quadrant. But these states of consciousness, while active, are not necessarily a demonstrative of active will. That's different. So that's why I say active mind plus will over passive mind equals the outcome. And I don't qualify that by saying a magical outcome, because it actually equals all outcomes: material, spiritual, mental, all of them. They all can work together in this, because we find that the universe can definitely be orientated with this rather reductive method, but one which helps you focus your intent. So the means then by which this energy is released, right, as part of that equation, would then be considered what is called the will and the word. Meaning, and this word can be spoken, written, it must have a kind of vibration. If the word is written, writing in and of itself carries vibration. By virtue of the nature of the script's effect upon the material universe. And speech is self-evident as a vibratory impact. So you gather yourself and then you release. And the release should be a singular word that to you encompasses all of the things that are involved in your thought process, all of the images that you've gathered, all of the sensations, every aspect of your consciousness is then bundled into a single word and then boom, released. So now I'm giving you this so that we can then discuss free will, because that's obviously a major portion of that. Because the question, right, I mean, that's been asked in ad nauseum by philosophers, and of course, all religion hinges on the idea that we, in fact, do have free will, right? What's the point in pursuing faith if, in fact, one does not have free will? So, how does one engage in free will? And are there scales of free will? Does free will become compromised over time? What would compromise one's free will? Does free will narrow? Like, these are all the things that I think about, and I'm only relating to me and my experience. In fact, I'm going to take just a moment and just segue here, because I want to address perhaps what might be a concern. When I relate stuff to everyone here, my touchstone is a particular life experience that I had. I was abroad. I was about 3,000 miles from home. I was spending time at Moody Beach in South Carolina. And I had decided I just needed to get my head together, and I went and I was walking north on the beach, and I run across this dude, just kind of a beachcomber, real swarthy, kind of grubby, wearing shorts. I was grubby too, so what am I saying? But he stops me and he just strikes up a conversation, and he asks me about myself and where I'm going. And he says, let me tell you about this beach. And he basically lays it out for me. He's like, there's the current comes up this way. And as it gathers, you're going to find these really sweet little seashells just 100 yards up here. Trust me. And you just dig a little. And sure enough, he was right. Well, I went up there, and as I turned around to say goodbye and thank him, he was like gone. He just disappeared. I don't know where he went. In the water, who knows? He just was gone, and it was open. It wasn't like there were trees or something. He just disappeared. So I always look at that as like, this is what I want to do. I've been on certain parts of this esoteric journey, and this has been my experience. And so if I get a chance to share that just momentarily and provide some illumination, some enlightenment, some joy, whatever, then that's actually my goal. That's what I want to do. I'm not trying to disprove someone's faith or be insensitive or any number of other things that people might think when I, talk about, for instance, the Bible and not seek redemption from the text, but enlightenment, right? So so steering back to free will, and by the way, discussion of the Bible and religion absolutely is salient with regard to free will, because the entire structure of that process is built on ancestral free will that impacts our current free will. All right. So back to the magical idea, the magical construct, and the idea of active mind and will over passive mind achieves your outcome. The question then is, will to me relates to the principle of vibration and to the principle of polarization specifically, and to that process that is described between them, right? So, which is strength. So the idea is that your vibration, because those two principles are descriptions of activities within the same thing, right? You cannot have vibration without polarization, but one does not cause the other. one requires the other to exist. So they both are part of the same thing. When you decide to evoke a particular vibration, by de facto, you will polarize yourself against certain things, which restricts your free will. It does. It can do nothing less than that. If you decide to violate that, then you're no longer vibrating at that level and now have repolarized yourself to your new intent. No matter what you do and no matter where you go, there you are. Your vibration and your polarization will determine the nature of the outcome of your magical intent. So that becomes your will, right? Your active mind is you participating over the passive mind, which is just there. But your will is engaged when you grasp the staff of power and you hold on to that staff by recognizing the impact of your vibration and your polarization on yourself and your environment. So one does have free will because we choose that activity. However, once you choose something, then the nature of your free will um, uh, restricts. Cameron says, and if someone isn't aware that they could dig themselves a deeper hole for themselves in a situation, yes, in fact, that's it. Is that we often find ourselves digging that hole unaware. The key is that you won't dig that hole if you're using active mind, because the active mind allows you to have, for lack of a better visual, for me, it's like being in a submarine with or without sonar. With sonar, I can ping all over the place, active mind, and I can get a real solid impression of the nature of my environment. Otherwise, it's just passive mind. And so I'm just listening with the phones to whatever sounds may be around me, but I can't necessarily penetrate and get an idea of what the structures of the things are, unless something else is making noise, which then I could determine what that is. But really, there's a dramatic difference. So as long as you are engaging an active mind, this is why in Buddhism, the presence of mind and understanding yourself presently is key to happiness. It's key to joy, because then you can inquire of yourself why you are engaging in what might be a negative polarized state. Why am I angry because this happened? What about this has caused me frustration? If you start actively pursuing that, actively asking yourself about these things, now you're engaging in next level mental alchemy, which will invariably restructure your internal world and allow your external world to change with it. And I believe that the more that you engage in this process of active mind and will over passive mind, the more free will you have within the scope of the things that you're doing. You're always going to be restricted. You carry, it's like walking within a large, vast room that is completely dark and you've got your lantern. You can always illuminate that area. You will always have command over that. But if you move over here, over there gets dark. If you move back over there, then over here gets dark, you know? So it's hence, no matter where you go, there you are. And you are, in a sense, defining the nature of the universe around you by your interaction with that. Yes, Cameron, exploring the circumstances instead of judging. Um, Horace says, so in a way that confirms where I keep coming back to, which is that will is an illusion. that what is could or could not be is be in the same way that polarization is an illusion of distinction within the absolute. Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. Yes, because we're only getting half, and we're only getting our experience, and no matter how much we try to prove that reality exists, each and every one of us are lensing that through ourselves, our soul, this expression of ourselves, and and the accumulation of experience that resides within ourselves, which adds and augments to that. So the illusion is that we think that that's absolute reality, and we function upon that, when the truth is it's reality is far more complex, and also not so complex. All right, so let's just wrap this idea up then. So with regard to will, then, um, there's a counterbalance to free will, and the counterbalance is power. So, a great visualization for this is in Aladdin, when the genie says, "I have vast universal power and teeny little bitty living space," and what he means by that is that the greater your power is within a particular framework, the more you have to serve that power. So, and we see that in everything. And you can't, if you become a member of the royal family, or you are a member of the royal family, you can't just generally walk away. I guess today you can, right? It's a terrible example, but there are other aspects where the power that you become, you wind up also having to serve that power and maintain it. So the less power you have, the more freedom you have. So the difference between gods and mortals, mythologically speaking, is the difference between absolute power, but then being restricted by their power, right? And then the absolute freedom of mortality. Because ultimately, nothing that we do matters because we're mortal. So what we do will eventually be undone by something else. Um, Yes. So Horace continues and says in the motto, "Do what thou wilt," the key word is do. Yes, absolutely. And and the recognition also is that the context of that is that one engages one's will under love. Now, the reason for that is uh, because we reside, if we look at ourselves within the tree, we are subject to Tiferet, the sun. So the sun is characterized as love, right? And beauty and perfection. And so we must align our will to that exemplar, which provides all things. That's why I like the idea of alchemy, because it is central to that concept, that for transmutation to exist, which is what this star teaches us, but for it to exist, one cannot be judgmental necessarily, right? Of what it is, and as Cameron says, but rather exploratory, investigative, seeking knowledge through a personal relationship with whatever it is that we're doing. Andy says, yes, more power, less freedom, less power, more freedom. Yep, exactly. And you just think about it. We can look around us right now The people who can do whatever they want. I mean, literally, the irony is that when you have no power, then the aphorism is, well, you can do what you can do. Which I don't know what you can do when you don't have any power. You can do what you can do, but you can do anything you want if you can do it. So Horace says, the funny thing is, I experience a merging of the source of will. Okay, let me get a drink here. Pardon me. There we go. Now I don't sound like I gargled glass. Oh, Aggie. Horace says, the funny thing is, I experience a merging of the source of will the more I align to what seems to be the will of the universe or God. It seems like my will, so the power is fulfilling and satisfying. Yes, I agree, and I have experienced that. And as you experience something like that, that's why I want everyone to know that one cannot do this and not have an appreciation for that which is divine. It's just the scope of what you see as divinity is a bit broader reaching, universal, if you will. And so it's humbling to think that in spite of that scope, you are considerable because things seem to work. And as you align yourself, as Horace says, to that force, which I personally believe in our frame of reference is an alignment to light as seen through Keter. As you align yourself to the light, you will find that your desire to be aligned to anything other than that is unpalatable at the least. And you'll find that your understanding of the differentiation between what you thought was darkness and what is actual darkness is a great deal different. That a lot of things that you might judge as darkness because of cultural bias have nothing to do with actual darkness. And similarly, the more that you seek after light, the greater your comprehension of the light. Eventually, and I've told many of my students this, especially my advanced group, eventually you will voluntarily commit yourself to one or the other. You just do. It doesn't have to be ceremonial or anything. You just realize that one day you've crossed that bridge and you don't ever want to go back. And in some cases, you couldn't go back, you know? And so then you become an agent of light or darkness. And I know it sounds so melodramatic, but it's the truth. Eventually you do. You have to. It's part of the process of what we do here as living souls. We participate in both, and eventually we find ourselves drawn to one or the other. So Cameron continues and says, the mind and body cohabitating. If one is off, then both aren't working to their full potential. Exactly. And in fact, I would add to this and say that what we are is the spirit and the body working together to become the mind. So the mind is the tool that and the device that allows us to negotiate between the body and the spirit. It is the mind that translates from one to the other the importance. The spirit doesn't understand the body. It doesn't understand the flesh. Hence, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. It simply doesn't grasp that there would be weakness because the spirit is not constrained by the lower vibratory state that is the body. And the union of body and spirit becomes the soul or the mind, and it is temporary. So the other two are there all the time. All the materials that are required to make a body and to keep making your body are present right now in the universe. And the spirit is eternal, of which we're enjoying a fragment, each of us, little pieces spread out. So, which to me I find beautiful. The idea then is this trifecta of awesome, which becomes you, right? Because the consciousness of your body is as valid and as instructive as the consciousness that you can gain from your spirit. It's the whole point of having a body, in my opinion. And the two together perform transmutation. And those forms of transmutation within a mental universe are more than just material, more than just, I take in light and turn into meat, right, with vitamin D and all the good stuff. It's what we do here, what we're doing right now through the process of me receiving thinking and my mind translating that thinking and then communicating that, and then you receiving thinking and translating that thinking, and then perhaps sharing that, which, don't forget, it really helps if you guys do the whole liking and sharing and subscribing, all that. I know that you who are here, but you who watch this later in the future, by all means, please help the channel out by doing that. It makes an extraordinary difference. All right. So does that help, Cameron? Am I narrowing in there for you? So we do have free will, but as you engage and it's why biblically, although the translation that is in common English is often lacks uh, the nuance of the word. They say straight is the way and narrow is the path. The truth is the idea is it's narrow and narrowing, right? So it kind of works, in one of those things. And that is in fact the way all the course of our lives are. That as we begin, there's this broad spectrum of choices for the more part. And then as we continue, the those choices narrow. And so your free will narrows with it. If I choose a certain course of instruction in college and it leads me to a field, say in mythology or what have you, then obviously I'm going to be that. And no, I'm not going to be a doctor now, unless I'm one of those. So, and that's the point. And as we choose things, it narrows. If my choice to become a husband and father narrowed the scope of my life, to this point of amazing and awesome. So, Cameron says, yes, it does. It's a wide topic where one answer isn't sufficient enough. Yes, in fact, it's true, and it's one wherein it's very personal. Nothing gets more personal than a discussion of free will. I just can't think of a single topic that is more personal than that, because we identify ourselves and the entire human race as a group of people who are doing things because they're thinking thoughts in their head and feeling emotions in their heart and doing things and being passionate about things, being angry about things, just doing stuff. So if philosophically, many of us have probably read, that the universe does just fine without free will, and in fact, there's no need for it, right? And the idea of actual free will, uh, in the biblical context of the eternal combat between good and evil and right and wrong, to the idea that a single person's act could tip the scales makes the universe rather unstable. So, but I believe in free will because it is given to those of us who are not creating things bigger than ourselves, right? We're human, creating more of us, we're creating our environment, but we can't, make stars and things and what those big things do. That we're just small. So we get to do all the things. And for me, the exciting part is I believe then it is given to us, assuming we're not overly fixated in our eternal narcissism of our soul, that that in fact the universe is employing us as a means of understanding itself, perhaps evolving aspects of itself, nurturing itself. I think that that is such a beautiful idea, and I'm more than happy to participate in the positive in that aspect. So, Andy says, according to Brie Brock, Kabbalah, I'm sorry, B'nai Baruch, Kabbalah, our free will is really only two choices: to consciously become like the creator, to bestow, or to stay separated, to receive. Yes, exactly. And I believe that if you seek to emulate that which is bestowed upon you, life, by 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 seeking that, that's where you then you yeah, by conscientiously seeking the light, which is found in Keter, right? By ascending upward through the tree, you are forever changed. You become part of the fire of the Creator. You are absorbed into the eternal fullness, and you become one with everything, right? And that decision to do that is what this is your apotheosis. The choice to not do that is just to hang out with the passive creation, to remain here, receptive. Is there anything wrong with one or the other? No, it's the all things are what they are. And so there can be no judgment because that which is here is here because it must be here. And Andy says it elevates the common soul. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And you become more. So Horace says, so within the terms we're using, what is the continuity of individual consciousness after the death of the body, if any? There is, I I probably mentioned this before, a long time ago. In Deep Space Nine, Odo is part of this group called the Dominion, right? And they go into this big lake of consciousness when they reunite with each other. For me, that is very much the visualization that I get. And then they can come back out. But when they are part of that, they don't actually have a name. The only reason Odo has a name is because he was separated, and then someone gave him the name Odo, which ironically means, what's this? Unknown substance, whatever. But when one returns to that, yeah, the ego, which is the sense of the middle self, all of it, the body returns to the vibratory state that supplied it. So it decomposes. The spirit returns and is remembered. And you can see the tree kind of break that up for you. The spirit is still carried, and by custody of Chokmah, can also return back to Keter. But the mind itself, what you were, what you are, I think the reason why we're fixated upon the idea of Save my soul. I believe that the mind is preserved. I believe the soul is saved. I believe that because all of it happens at once, while you, as a sense of ego, dissolve, that what you are is still preserved within the Akashic record. You are no longer what you are now. What you are now is unique. It is a one for, and it is in constant flux, constant change. So you can never really say, I'm me, because after I eat some food, then me becomes something plus whatever. I'm me 5 years from now. I've changed substantially. A lot of my cells have been replaced, you know. So, but the sense of that remains eternal. It becomes your, poetically, it is the shade, right? It's not, it's the shoot. It is the impression that is left behind. I mean, we could break it down completely into Egyptian mythological terms. Get your butt, girlfriend. Silly girl. But let's see. Andy says the body dies, ego dissolves, the soul is eternal and absorbs the quality of the experience, and continues on. The spirit, I would replace the terms, because for me the differentiation is the soul is the joining of body and spirit. It's why, for instance, when an airplane crashes, a lot of times you'll see the news anchor go, 90 souls were lost in the crash of whatever. It's meaning that the cessation of that one for is gone. It's why when someone passes away, often it can be spoken of them that the world is diminished in their passing, right? Because there will never be another like them. So, but the spirit is eternal. The spirit itself is to me, in concept, fascinating, merely because the spirit's countenance then is seen through the body, which then becomes the soul expression, right? All this. So it's interesting. The visual I have is like pushing hands through a blanket or something, and then the blanket itself, through the pressure that it receives, then becomes you. I don't know, but yeah. So the differentiation to me is important, merely because it provides greater context to a lot of different writing that you might read, and what someone might be speaking of with regard to certain things that they're writing. So if your spirit is weighed down, that then has an impact across the board to everything. Horace says, does the spirit have awareness of, pardon me, my throat. Let's try this again. I know, right, Aggie? All right. Horace says, does the spirit have awareness, or is it a generic quality like the spirit of adventure? I'm not speaking metaphorically, like the spirit of adventure. I'm speaking in a more aboriginal context. So, meaning that all things have spirit within it. It's all things that the universe generates in layers that are consistent with the vibration of that layer. So that at the core, all things are first created spiritually. And then that creation then works outward into material creation, right? And we can see that presented in the tree. And we can see that presented in a series of stages, where each stage then slows things down enough so that things can eventually become stable. So that implies that the spirit, your spirit, the spirit that inhabits your body, that fragment of the eternal all is also unique. That spirit is yours, which is why we say it is your spirit. It's more than just the spirit of adventure. It is the essence of your being at its purest and highest form. Andy says, spirit is pure consciousness, all of it, and all is connected. Yes. And that's the thing, is that while it is a fragmentary component of the essence of the all, it is the all. Now, keep in mind, just as a character within a play of Shakespeare's is part of Shakespeare, that character is not Shakespeare, right? You can be part of the thing, but not the thing, even though all of your essence is that thing, that nothing of you is anything but that thing, but it is only a fragment. And he continues, he says, what we understand is self-awareness is essentially ego. Yes, because ego means the self, it is the I. So now I've historically broken this down into the me, myself, and I. So the me is the soul, that is the mind, it's me. The myself is that third person perspective that the spirit grants, you know? And then the I is the body, it's the subjective self. It is this here, right? So the mind cannot be touched. The subjective self can be touched. The spirit cannot be touched, but the subjective self can be touched. And both the spirit and the mind can influence the subjective self, and the subjective self can influence the spirit and the mind. So, Horace says, thanks for indulging the existential insecurities of my rational mind late at night. Yes. So, yes, there's more than one voice in all of our heads. Well, maybe that's just me. Is that just me? I don't know. Is that just me, Aggie? What do you think? So, let's see. What else? I lost track of where I was going. Anyway, I want to thank you guys, by the way, for just hanging out with me. And this is an excellent dialogue. I love it. I appreciate it so much. It's really good to be here with you. And I'm really enjoying doing these Ask an Alchemist live. I expect to do a lot more live stuff. Hey, Steve. So Steve says, I've been thinking about how to synchronize some Kabbalah Tarot stuff with alchemy, but it seems tricky. I'm assuming I have to take the paths of 6 metals to Tiferet in order to do the Philosopher's Stone stuff. I cannot to Tiferet for lead. Yes, Tiferet. I'm sorry, I'm reading, Steve. Give me just a moment here. Your process is slightly different than my own. Um, when you're using, like, are you speaking of a material form of alchemy that you're engaging in? Or are we talking about the association of the metals with the various spheres within the tree, and then how those metals correspond with potential states of consciousness, which would then influence what you're doing? Um, oh, well, my suggestion in messing around with it is totally cool. I highly recommend playing with it, working to see what works for you, what makes things click. My method works for me. I'm the guy on the beach who's like, I know this part of the beach really well, and I probably tell you about some mountains, you know? But my method has been to satisfy my state of consciousness and my own curiosity. And then as a teacher, my method has been to seek understanding of the states of consciousness of my students and satisfy their states of curiosity. So, alchemy and um, the tarot and Kabbalah mesh together like a hand in a glove. The way I use it and describe it relies on the tarot as a tool to describe certain processes, certain states. And we talk about this at great length on like Tarot Tuesdays on Patreon. So, by the way, I have just started free trials on Patreon for the Advanced Studies group. So it's like a week-long free trial. So if you're really curious about what we're talking about, by all means, I've got material there that a very small community of people have seen, and by very small, I mean, under under 1,000. So that means the likelihood of you not having seen it, because a lot of it's never come to YouTube, is probably pretty high. Whoever hasn't there, so you got 7 days. Anyway, I thought I'd throw that out there. It's something new. Um, oh yeah, no, I'm seriously here because that's, for me, it's kind of what happens for me. It's my own vibration, my polarization. My joy comes from sharing, from just allowing others to go, yeah, this is pretty beautiful. Like, it really is. And the tools that you learn through this are tools that will assist you in describing other stuff. Um, Saturn is lead and iron is for Gavura, Mars. So, yeah. And then the line between them would be seen as the chariot, right? Because the hangman then goes below Gavura to Hod. So, yeah. And the idea, by the way, you might be thinking also in your personal transmutation of the various spheres, the chakra spheres within yourself. So, for instance, the heart is seen as green, and the element is lead. So often we speak then and say that this is the lead that must be turned to gold. And I've suggested the idea then is an elevation of energy within the self, because the solar plexus, the sun center, is just below the heart. So through increasing one's vibration, then that rises upward, right? So then because the solar plexus is gold, that element. So by increasing that vibration, just that, doing an emerald and kicking it up a notch, literally just bumping it up and learning to maintain that, we center ourselves on the tree and temperate. We truthfully, we crucify ourselves there through the polarization that we maintain. Then we become fixed. That's the idea of polarization. The staff of power is then one becomes resistant to the caprice of rhythm. By fixing oneself within a certain polarized level, an energetic state, um, you you become resistant to the decline, right? Because you've moved over a bit. I'm so thirsty. ah, so, it's as I said earlier, it's like you have your light, and as you move from one side to the other, the light goes with you, leaving the other stuff now out. Okay, Steve says, and I feel like I've almost got the stuff to fit satisfactory, but there are a few things that are coming out weirdly. Well, give yourself time. It for me, a touchstone has been the realization that you can put three tools together, and this has been um, an act or aspect of my teaching on Patreon that perhaps can be considered unique. I don't know if I should be so bold, but definitely I've not seen it done as I have presented it. And that is by taking Kabbalah and the Tree of Life and including um, the principles that are found within the Kabbalion, the seven Hermetic principles, placing those within proper context on the tree, and then recognizing that the tarot is a visual language, a mnemonic language that can help you articulate and understand the four worlds of the tree and the four layers that are presented, or four worlds that exist within each sphere. Okay, so that's what I've been working on, and that's been the substance of what we've talked about um, on Patreon on Tarot Tuesdays and a number of other stuff. But Andy says, I'm really good at lowering my vibration, almost professional. Yeah, I have found that what we consume on many levels will determine the outcome of our vibration. It's part of that narrowing process. So, speaking from my own experience, the consumption of 35 years of bad food and poor nutrition and bad habits definitely delayed, my it was like walking through jello all the time compared to what I experience now. And um, when you consume things that you know erode your conscious state, that can have an impact on everything else. On the other hand, we are human beings and we need to learn to play. So all of these things are part of it. Um, Perhaps my favorite, since I'm noticing that Andy prefers bourbon, just cracking me up. Just remember that the road of excess leads to the palace of wisdom. Uh, so, which on the tree is a fascinating thought. Anyway, uh, thank you guys. Seriously, crack me up. Well, are there any other questions that are out there? If not, thank you guys very much for being with me, hanging out. I'm going to do this every Thursday. I love it. It's so much fun. Let's see. Yep. Wendy's. Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you, you guys. For sure. Thank you. And I will be talking to you guys next Thursday. And don't forget, if you are interested in checking out the community at the Modern Alchemist Channel, I made the highest tier have a free week. So you can join up, check it out. There is literally, I started doing it in 2018. So there is not just videos, but a ton of articles. I used to do Ask an Alchemist live, but it was in an ask me anything kind of setting where I would write within the period of time, the hour. So you can look at the timestamps. And my challenge to myself was to articulate a good, answer to a question. So there's literally a library of stuff to read and see and watch. And so check it out. It'll be fun. Thank you, guys. This has been, yeah, thank you, Andy. I definitely appreciate that. And you guys have a really good night. And I will be talking to everyone. You will be talking to everyone really soon. Good night, everyone.